Yeah, and bear in mind for the listeners, this wasn't a question of whether or not we should stop having a weekly meeting, but rather whether we should stop having two weekly meetings. So we're currently having two. We were thinking of cutting it back to one, but it looks like for now we're sticking with two meetings a week.
Yeah, although I did notice there were more people attending the Sunday meeting, so it does make me wonder if the Sunday is a better day for most folks. Um, I think there were 4 or 5 people on Sunday when I stopped in.
Yeah, and of course the general public is invited to that, and that should be useful in the future. I hope to invite more and more people who are against it, especially now that it seems like they're kind of losing their minds about us and about the Free State movement in general. It would be a good time to reach out to them and just reach out, and see if they are willing to dialogue.
Well, speaking of people who are against independence for New Hampshire, the full video of the debate that happened a couple weeks ago out on the Seacoast has been posted. Alu Axelman did post a version on the Liberty Block YouTube channel, but there was a serious audio issue where it desyncs relatively early on in the video, so I did make a proper version that the audio stays synced, and you can find that over at NHexit.us. There's a recent post from November 9th with a link to that video is posted to Odyssey. It's approximately an hour-long debate, and it is Axelman versus a guy named Zach Hampel, and Zach is just all over the place. He's a mess at trying to defend the empire and basically gets crushed by Alu, in my opinion, but you guys can watch it and certainly make up your own mind about it. But if he's the best that the Empire's got to throw at us, they don't have very much.
They're gonna say he's controlled opposition, but I think there actually might be some truth to that, because I think he was kind of more like, how when you're in high school they have you debate even if you disagree with the point that you're debating. He may have been actually taking devil's advocate, just to fill in the shoes because no one else would do it.
I did. That's kind of what I thought might be the case, and so I asked Alu about that, and he seemed to be of the belief that Zach really does believe in staying with the Empire. So, I mean, maybe he's just putting on a show, but ultimately his opponent in the debate seemed convinced that Zach was actually in favor of staying with the Empire. So that's all I got on that.
I was in favor of it until about 2008.
Yeah, that's actually interesting you bring that up, because I've heard sort of things from people who I've spoken with previously about independence for New Hampshire. One of the examples is a guy who has led some of the protests in Concord and outside of state hospitals. I don't know if I should name his name, but he's fairly well known in those circles. And I spoke with him over the weekend. There are now weekly gatherings at the Concord State House to just sort of general freedom rallies protesting, whether it be mask mandates or business regulations or whatever, various different things. And he was there this weekend, and of course Alu and I and Bonnie were there all handing out. Alu had another friend there, Melissa. So we had 4 people working a relatively small crowd of maybe 3 dozen or 4 dozen people. So we flyered the whole crowd with Foundation for New Hampshire Independence flyers. And of course, I struck up a conversation with this guy who I've had a conversation with before, and he definitely had moved in his position to being more in favor of independence. He didn't shoot it down like he had before. He's definitely one of those flag waver guys. He has like a big American flag on his truck. So, I wouldn't say he's 100% on board, but he didn't shoot the idea down. He definitely seemed more open to it, although his main objection is, and this is definitely something I think we're going to come up against this a lot, especially as people start to take the issue more seriously. His main objection is immigration, and I suspect that is what's going to schism the independence movement, whether it happens before or after we actually do go ahead and move forward and pass the amendment. That is ultimately likely to be the issue that puts the schism on this movement.
So I actually hadn't heard that before, except for people complaining about the idea that they might have trouble getting to Massachusetts or something like that, which of course Massachusetts could do that to us.
Well, in his objection, seemed to suggest that he would want walls to be built around New Hampshire, that it wouldn't be Massachusetts putting up the wall, that it would be New Hampshire putting up the wall. And he was not the only person that I spoke with on that particular day. Again, this is an event that is likely to attract more the right wing. There's another guy who I spoke with about independence, and I asked him about, whether he supports New Hampshire independence, and he said, supports secession? Hell yeah. So he was all about it, but he also brought up concerns about migrants coming here. And so anyway, I just figured I'd bring that up. Like, some people I've seen move their position on this. Dan Richard is another one. I think you mentioned him over the weekend from Coalition of, I don't know, what are they called? Committee of Safety. He definitely wasn't as in favor of it before, but you suggested he might be more in favor of it now. It's just a lot of the right-wingers there. Some of them are afraid of immigration, and that's going to be a big issue with this.
Yeah, Dan has he wants to be on the NH Independence email list.
Oh, cool.
So I'll add him to the next email. It's been kind of a quiet list lately, which is good because it's an email list.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. You don't want to get too many emails.
But yeah, with the immigration thing, yeah. So that guy, he thinks the feds should control immigration. Well, okay. So how is that working out for you?
Well, yeah, obviously not. But I suspect he believes that it would work out better in a small state with, a smaller government that would be focused on doing something like that. It's just that's going to be one of those issues that I don't think that the people who support independence will come together on. It's going to be an issue that's going to be very divisive eventually.
Well, I mean, not necessarily, because if you think about it, that such New Hampshire immigration policy has not been set. We could, whatever the policy is, are you sure you trust Washington with it more than you trust Concord? Because you can actually go to the Concord and protest every week, as you do.
Yeah. Well, actually, what one of the things that this guy who, again, I had spoken with previously and he had been against it, said was he actually would be interested. He would still kind of support secession, even if it required just us to just jump in head first without figuring these things out in advance. So that made me feel good, because it really showed that he was sick and tired of the federal government. And even though he has concerns about borders and all of that, that he was still willing to sign on with essentially what we're proposing, which is, look, let's just go and figure out the details later. So he actually suggested that he was amenable to that particular approach, even though obviously one of his major issues once we do secede will be border restrictions.
Yeah, it's sort of the big tent approach, right? Instead of trying to fix all the problems at once, it's just fixing one problem. It's just fixing the fact that Washington can come in here and crack heads.
Right. Yep. And then let's see, what else was in the news? So there was the debate recently. Have you spotted anything else media-wise?
I'm probably missing a lot of things right now. I did report a lot of things on Sunday. I'm trying to go through and find the things that I hadn't already reported on the Sunday meeting. But I know it's not independence related, but it's a big thing that it's just almost impossible to avoid talking about. And that's the stuff that happened to Joe Orga and Mark Manchin when they tried to run video cameras in the town of Charlestown, New Hampshire.
Oh, yeah. I've seen some of that footage. And, of course, we have Joe on my radio show on Thursday nights. Well, sometimes he's busy and we've got to get somebody else to fill in. But he told us all the details on that last week on Thursday night on Free Talk Live. So if people have heard anything about this or haven't heard anything about it, the small town corruption there in Charlestown, New Hampshire is on full display, and it's pretty ugly.
I don't know if Joe would be considered an independence activist or not. He's probably in favor of it, but I don't want to speak for him.
I've never heard him speak against it, and it certainly comes up a lot on the air, so he probably has had an opportunity to weigh in, and I just don't remember offhand what if he has said in favor of it, but he certainly has not been against it.
One of the minor benefits of obviously being a New Hampshire independence activist is that it just makes it easier to publicize bad things that happen to you.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, by the way, did you hear about sort of more of national news, Project Veritas getting raided by the FBI?
Yeah. I haven't looked into it very closely because it's not a New Hampshire thing, but
No, but it is a thing that is going to upset a lot more people about, the behavior of the federal government, because even this the guy behind Project Veritas, he admitted in an interview on Fox News that he didn't realize how bad it was. And he's dealing with corruption all the time, right? Like Project Veritas is doing undercover videos revealing various different corrupt entities and governments and such, and he didn't even realize how insane the FBI can be. And they did a pre-dawn raid on his home over the weekend. So now he's had a taste of that, and that's gonna really upset a lot of conservatives. I did see, I forget who pointed me. Oh yeah, Alu posted a clip. It looks like a 19-minute long video from some much longer video with a bunch of conservative types, like conservative commentator types, that were speaking on a stage, sort of like a roundtable discussion, and they were taking questions from the audience. And this was like a 19-minute long discussion about secession. And of course, some of the conservatives that were there were still of the opinion that, we need to take back D.C. and shove our opinion down the Democrats' throats. But there were 2 or 3 people out of the maybe 6 that were on the stage who were firmly, seemingly in favor of secession. One of them said that secession is inevitable. Another one was talking about how the right-wingers need to vote with their feet and move to places like Texas or Florida or whatever. So to have these relatively influential right-wingers now, these are names. These are people like Ben. What the hell's his last name? I forget his name. But anyway, younger guy. He's got like a talk show or whatever. And
Shapiro?
Yeah, that's him. He was on there. Candace Brown, or I forget her name too. You can tell I don't follow these guys, but there's a black lady who's a conservative, and she was on the panel, and a guy named Matt, I think, Kibbe or something. Anyway, I could be completely butchering these people's names, but I've seen them, on social media and such, and they've got huge followings. And they were all seemingly in favor of independence for red states. So there's definitely a national level conversation going on about this stuff. So these are definitely exciting times. And go ahead.
What was this stage again? This meeting?
I am not sure. I think it was the Daily Caller, some sort of conservative website, had gotten these conservative types on a stage in front of, I don't know, hundreds, a few thousand people in the audience. It looked like a fairly big kind of convention center or theater or something that they were in. And they were just talking about secession for 20 minutes. So,
yeah, that's good. That was the whole topic of the whole meeting.
No, this was just a question from an audience member. So I don't know what the gist of the meeting was. But this was the clip that Alu Axelman posted on his Twitter, I think over the weekend or yesterday or something.
Yeah, so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it was interesting and very, I would say overall it was positive. The only real concern I had was one of the people who was clearly in favor of the empire told the lie that, secession or this sort of thing is always violent, and none of the people who actually favored independence called him on it. Which, of course, the easiest way to call somebody on that is to give the example of Brexit, which had no violence whatsoever and is fairly recent.
In Deutschland, there shall be no revolution, because all revolution has been forbidden.
Yeah.
Strich verboten. The thing with Project Veritas, I guess that is like, if you think about it, when we set this up in September and we're working on the wording and deciding whether to do it and stuff like that, the unspoken probably understanding is that things as they are right now are not bad enough for secession to actually happen. But we're projecting where they'll be in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And we were projecting that there would be a series of things that would happen that would alienate the public from the feds.
Right.
And so obviously the first one that did happen was the vaccine mandate. The first really, really big one that did happen was the vaccine mandate. And maybe this is the second really, really big one, although there are others I'm missing probably.
Yeah, definitely the vaccine mandate. When I'm out at these protests, I've got a video camera with me set up on a tripod, and I talk to people and say, hey, are you interested in being interviewed on video about your opinions regarding independence? And one of the questions I ask is, what was the final straw? What was, a key issue for you that, made you want to say goodbye to the United States? And that vaccine mandate is what comes up, I would say, more often than anything else from the people I've been speaking with. So that is definitely a major indicator, major proponent, or I guess there's a word I'm looking for, spacing on it, but influencer.
Yeah. Well, the thing that ended Serbian rule over Yugoslavia was one of the key events that did this, set off the chain of affairs, was the Mladina incident, which is very similar to the Crypto 6 incident and also similar to the Veritas incident.
Mm-hmm.
And so, each time they do this, this could be the Mladina incident, for the United States. That was like in 1988. There was a newspaper kind of aimed at younger people. Mladina means youth, I think, in Slovenian, and the newspaper published some articles about the Yugoslav Federal Army. Yugoslav National Army, and the army responded by arresting 4 of the journalists, right? And this sparked tense situation between Slovenia and the central government, and the Slovenes were pressured into prosecuting these kids, and they became known as the 4. And what happened was Yugoslavia was so decentralized at that time that Slovenia had to be the Slovene government had to be the institution to do the prosecutions and stuff like that. Belgrade, I don't think they could do it. I don't think they had the power. But they bullied the Slovene government into arresting them and putting them on charges. And it was it was complete softball, right? They're like, oh, okay, you guys, well, be sure to come back. We're not going to give you any bail conditions. I don't know all the details about the original arrest and stuff like that. But once they were charged and everything, they had to be convicted and all that. And they said, okay, well, just show up for jail at night, and just make sure you're here each night. And they just let them go, basically. And then one of the guys, he said, I had to break into my own jail because I got back late.
Wow.
That's how light the sentence was. It wasn't a super long sentence. They were all heroes to Slovene people. But then, of course, the Yugoslav government felt humiliated and just kept ratcheting up and trying to remove the centralization that had made Yugoslavia work so well, or relatively well. For a communist country, it worked great. And the Serbian central government kept chipping away at that independence, the state that the republic already had. And that's what triggered the initial fighting, which in turn triggered an ethnic war.
Well, let's hope that fighting doesn't happen in this case.
Yeah, there's many steps to avoid here. There's, but particularly the Slovenes. The Slovenes were willing to use force, and they didn't fight for very long or very brutally, but what they did set off a chain of affairs that wasn't positive. So I always have to wonder what would have happened if the Slovenes had used only Gandhi methods and Eric Chenoweth methods against the Yugoslav government, instead of shooting down one of their own helicopters, and because it was too closely associated with the Yugoslav government. That's how this whole thing started. It was just they shot down a Slovene pilot. So that it's just he was trying to help his buddies in the Yugoslav army, right? So that's the kind of thing that shouldn't be done. But of course, we don't have the power to do it, fortunately.
Yeah, and our movement, at least, hopefully will continue to be peaceful. It has been peaceful. The document that has been filed with the state government, as much as the leftists and the statists hate it, it is a peaceful resolution to secede, declare independence from the United States. So we're definitely not rattling a saber or anything like that. We're just going to walk away. And somebody called Free Talk Live last night. I think it was last night, to bring up all the usual absurd objections about how, the federal government could get violent. And, again, that's just a reason for us to leave and do it peacefully.
That's the most important reason to leave, is because you're hesitating to do it, because you're scared to do it. That's why it has to be done.
Yeah.
In a sense, otherwise you're rewarding the bad guy. You're just feeding them kills. I'm looking through my list of things to talk about, which is just a general list.
Have you been doing talk radio calls? How have those been going?
Yeah, lots. I've added a few stations to the list. It's hard to find them and add them. It's a grueling process to figure out who will take calls and who has a show that you can actually listen to without having to get an account and stuff like that. But I've started calling WBZ again, which I used to do in the 2014 era.
Isn't that a news talk station? Or sorry, a news only station?
No, it has a little bit of talk.
Oh, okay.
That's in Boston, and there's a show on like 8 p.m. to 12 a.m. It takes calls, and it wasn't too hard to get on. I think you can only call once a week, so I managed to get on last week, and I talked about it in New Hampshire Independent. It's so easy, you can do it without changing the subject, because they're always talking about national stuff anyway. So it's always the same argument. We can either play whack-a-mole with the issue of tonight. We can work on that issue tonight. But while you're talking about that issue, they're doing 940 other things right this minute,
right,
that are just as bad, and you don't have time to get to them. So we can play whack-a-mole against all 940 issues and lose, or we can strike at the root of the problem peaceably, which is their rule over the states.
Yeah. Agreed. So coming up this week, we've got another Sunday meeting. Those are at 1:00, and the URL is what's the best way for people to find a link to that, Dave?
You go to forum.shiresociety.com. You can find it, but you have to scroll down quite a bit. I think. Let me check NHexit.com and make sure it's there. It may be on NHexit.com. Yeah, so if you go to NHexit.com and just the word meet, then it's right there.
Perfect.
Yeah. Everyone's invited, and I would like to get people there who are against it.
Might be easier said than done.
Maybe. But I'm glad that person called into your show about it. That's great. I'll have to listen to that call. The governor, Sununu, has decided not to run for U.S. Senate.
I saw that.
I'm not sure how that affects us.
That's interesting. I guess he thought he was not going to be able to do it.
Well, he thinks he's going to try to be governor again for a fourth term, which I think might not be very precedented.
Well, he definitely sees that as the path of least resistance. I mean, he had been talking a lot about running for Senate, and then all of a sudden decided not to. And I think that's because some of the polls were showing that his support was not so hot. And he feels like it'd probably be easier to just stay on the current course and be reelected as an incumbent. And, whether we like it or not, that's still something that happens here in New Hampshire. If you're an incumbent, there's a good chance you're going to get reelected.
Or anointed.
Yeah, you're right. So, but we'll see. There's already people talking about running against him in the Democrat and or Republican or Libertarian parties. So the Democrat that ran last time against him has left the state. So he's not going to be running again. So it's basically an open field for Democrat candidates. So hopefully we'll get a pro-liberty candidate in there. I know nobody had talked about doing that a couple of years ago when he ran for the Republican nomination against Sununu, and sadly was ignored by the news media because they just absolutely ignored anyone except for Sununu. So maybe running in an open field of Democrats would get him a little bit of attention. And Karlin Boryashenko, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right. She's a lady that interviewed Alu a few weeks ago on her YouTube channel. She's very popular. She's got like 100,000 subscribers there. Very, very popular on Twitter. She is talking about running for the Libertarian nomination for governor here in New Hampshire. And so if we're lucky, we may end up having a New Hampshire independent supporter in all three of the races, Democrat, Libertarian, and Republican primaries for governor, which would be really nice. And that's something that that maybe the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence will be focusing on. I mean, I can't speak for them. I'm not part of their organization, but Alu was just elected as the new president. So he's been brought on the board of directors and made the president. So they brought some fresh blood in there, which is fantastic. And of course, anybody that knows him knows that, he's a real go-getter. But, maybe they're going to be focusing. I guess they can't endorse candidates as a 501c3, but that doesn't mean that, NHexit couldn't endorse candidates or some other organization. But it would be interesting to, kind of like the Reopen NH people in 2020 were endorsing people that were in favor of, freedoms regarding COVID, to have, NHexit or whoever actually endorsing candidates that are in favor of independence.
There is a another micro independence type thing happening in that, speaking of reopennh.com, they are called for a special session of the state legislature to hear a bill on an emergency basis, which would prohibit state agencies from aiding in enforcement of the mandates. By that I mean, by that they mean the federal mandates.
Sweet.
So where there's independent smoke, there's usually independence fire, but this is just independent smoke for now.
All right, man. We're up on a half an hour here, or coming up on a half an hour. And anything else that you want to share, or should we just wrap this up?
There's nothing I can think of off the top of my head. I'm probably missing something, but I'll report it in the Sunday meeting.
Cool. That's 1 o'clock on Sunday. You said the link is at forum.shiresociety.com and also NHexit. Which one?
NHexit.com.
There's 3 NHexit websites, which is that's the beauty of decentralization.
Yeah.
All right, Dave. Thanks for coming in.
All right. Thanks, Ian.
Yeah. See you later.
Okay. Bye.
Good night.
We'd like to invite you to visit freekeen.com. Freekeen.com features audio, video, and blogs chronicling the transition to a voluntary society. Freekeen.com also has comments and discussion forums so you can be heard. Freekeen.com.
I should be in Keene, New Hampshire with the Free Staters.